Good afternoon. We are going to continue. Everyone, good afternoon. Thank you for being here after the coffee. We would like to say thank you for your participation. And now we continue with the panel of funding of the private sector as a main character. We invite our moderators, that is Claudia Valdez for Vivir Invest, and the panelist, Gabriela Azocar, country manager from sustainability and the Santander Bank. Please give them a mic, and we are going to start with this reflection. So these projects
de contrato. Creo que hemos desarrollado potentemente un nivel de conocimiento técnico. Hemos también colaborado con algunos cambios normativos que han permitido que este instrumento sea reconocido. algo así como algunas modificaciones que se hicieron con el CNE o con la CNE a las garantías de pago o que fueran reconocidas estas pólizas como instrumentos válidos para garantizar contratos. Y eso ha sido, yo creo que el mayor desafío, lograr que la institucionalidad, que los diferentes fondos, inversores, bancos, lenders, reconozcan este instrumento un instrumento viable para ser parte de su proyecto.
Sí, Sole.
Ahí sí, ya. Oye, bueno, nosotros desde Banco Santander
From Banco
Eh,
Santander, what we have done, because this energy transition is one of the greatest challenges in our generation. It is not only from the perspective of investment that it's an enormous challenge, but also about sustainability. We talked about the social technical transitions, and these
¿Aló? Un desafío,
And this is a challenge,
no es solamente sino también es un desafío.
it is a challenge in so many different levels. No, can you hear?
¿Aló? Ya. Ahí sí. Y lo que hemos hecho como Banco Santander.
And what we have done as Santander Bank,
Yo diría que van en varias líneas.
and what I am doing, it is working in this line.
Entidades de gobierno.
We have done a lot of entities in the government and the multilateral one. So we are participating in the different roundtables, and we have the feedback in such a way that these ways, these topics that are so high level, according to the experiences of our customers. We have done different alliances
Impulsar la construcción sostenible.
and how to push forward the sustainable transition. I think that to advance in this transition, it is very important not to fund some aspects. I'm going to show later some examples, but it's really important training, internal and external, the engagement, as I said, with organizations of development and institutions, and how to contribute from that perspective. I want to ask Peter from a different perspective a little bit. We're going to talk in English with him.
So the question for you would be, how does UNIDO engage with the private sector to scale investment in clean energy in the region?
Great, thanks very much, Claudia, and to the IDB, and also to Alade for inviting UNIDO to be here in the Energy Week, particularly the 10th Energy Week. So really excited to be here. So thank you for inviting us to participate. I hope it's okay to speak in English. My Spanish is very poor. I apologize in advance for that. But I've got my translator here for the rest of the panel, which is in Spanish. So UNIDO is the UN's agency that specializes in sustainable and inclusive industrial development. So that's its main mandate for the United Nations. So it's particularly leading on work with the private sector. So working directly with industries, with small to medium-sized enterprises, but also ministries of industry and energy to look at how we can increase the role of the private sector in these clean energy transitions. So the sorts of work that we do is a range of different support packages. So we do work such as technical, which a lot of the multilateral organizations do. We also do grant financing mechanisms as well. So that's the provision of grants to try and de-risk investments, to make projects more bankable, to bring in the private sector. And then we also have a series of convening platforms as well. So just to give quick case studies of each of them, and then I'm sure we can move to the next question. But in grant financing, so just to give one case study of one of our new facilities, which is called the Accelerate to Demonstrate facility, the A2D facility, which is provided with about roughly $80 million from the government of the UK to provide grant financing to actually construct and operate innovative clean energy technologies in developing countries, so including the LAC region. It's a global program. We announced our first 5 projects this year, but we're hopefully going to have some LAC projects in the next round that we can hopefully announce at COP as well. So we work directly by providing grant finance to the sector. So this isn't money that goes by the government. There are lots of other programs that we have that work directly with the government, but we contract directly with the private sector that then tries to get co-financing and co-funding for those projects. So very much focused on innovative projects, because a lot of these projects are not commercial yet. And we know that from a lot of statistics that 35% of the emissions reductions that we need to meet climate targets actually need to come from clean energy projects that are at the demonstration phase, not at the commercial phase. So we use mechanisms like this to accelerate the commercialization and bring in the banks like Santander and others, and insurance company and the energy utility companies to provide the larger amounts of finance that are needed for these very capital intensive projects, such as in clean hydrogen. We work in critical minerals is another theme, digitalization for energy, and industrial decarbonization of cement, chemicals. So that's one of our main mechanisms. For technical assistance, there's a lot of different programs, but one that's operating as of this year in the region is called the Net Zero Partnership, and it's got a number of projects now, now that are operating in Argentina, Brazil, and Mexico. That's really exciting, and hopefully will expand to the rest of the region. So this is different from the previous facility that I mentioned. It's very much on the planning stage. So a lot of these activities are not commercial. Feasibility studies, front-end engineering design studies, they cost $2-3 million to do. There's no commercial return on that part. So this is to help de-risk that, to make the projects more bankable, which is what the private sector wants to see. And finally, the third point I was making was on convening platforms. So to use the example of Brazil, we have a number of initiatives now looking at industrial decarbonization hubs and clean hydrogen hubs, working with the Brazilian government to try and bring together international climate finance to Brazilian industry, to do projects such as industrial decarbonization of cement in particular, and steel are the first sort of two, and also clean hydrogen. So matchmaking platforms with financiers to try and leverage in international climate finance. So there are 3 main types of package.
Interesting. And I think regarding what I said before, right, that we have 3 very different perspectives in terms of how your institutions, right, are envisioning the financing for the vision. But also there's, I guess, a common ground, for example, communication, information, and also an important part is, I don't know if this is a word in English, replicability, scalability, right? To be able to promote this and this be more massive. So in that sense, my question for you, Peter, again, would be regarding, you know, what particular mechanisms you've seen, and the question is, what innovative financial mechanisms are helping overcome the so-called valley of debt between public and private funding for clean energy projects in Latin America and the Caribbean?
Great, thanks very much. So I've got some stats here on my little notepad here, because I thought I'd start off with some financing stats to set the picture. So we know that there's a financing gap of about 4.3 trillion per year to meet the Sustainable Development Goals. So it's obviously a huge amount. But then when you put that in context, that's about 1/5 of the amount of money going towards, for example, defense and security per year. So it's a lot of money, but actually the private sector has a strong role in helping to meet that target. But then we also saw at COP29 the announcement of the 300 billion per year public finance commitment from developed countries to developing countries, and how I think in 2022 that target for the original climate finance goal of 100 billion per year, I think it was 116 billion in 2022. That was the last figure that was released, I think, last week in New York from the Climate Policy Initiative. So we see that there's progress being made, but it's still quite significant, the gap that needs to be made. And in terms of climate finance, we see about 1.9 trillion is the current amount of international climate finance from all sources in all countries. Again, that's the latest figure from last week. That was also published in New York. But that includes all the finance happening in developed countries as well. So when we see the difference there, there is actually quite a big difference between the amount of flows needed, for example, to the region, and those that we see in terms of global amounts of finance. So some of the work that we're doing in UDO on innovative finance mechanisms, I mentioned already things like catalytic grants, where we're not just providing grants to any project, but those that have the aim of de-risking to bring in the private sector. I mentioned that one before. But we're also looking at blended finance. I don't know, IDB investors as a lead in that, and the IFC as well have huge portfolios in blended finance. But we see increasingly in those harder to abate sectors, but like industrial decarbonisation, hydrogen, and now there's a lot of discussion on minerals. The project pipeline for minerals is still quite low and is mainly focused on the upstream, and we don't see as many blended finance projects in the midstream, so things like refining, processing of minerals, or downstream recycling, e-waste management of minerals. So there's a role for blended finance in that space as well. So we have an example of a program called the Transformation Pathways Fund, and this aims to leverage $3 billion US dollars, and it works with a global asset manager firm called Finance in Motion. And it's trying to basically leverage a lot of finance from asset management and also from the banks to try and get the stage after some of these other facilities that I mentioned, so really the commercial projects. We also have in the region that UNIDO is leading a fund called the Renewable Energy Innovation Fund as well, which is operating in Uruguay, but I think has expansion plans to look at replicating that model in Chile as well, which is really exciting to see. So that works with 7 of the world's largest commercial banks as well to try and de-risk projects, make more bankable, larger scale projects. And the third and final instrument, so that's catalytic grants, blended finance, is a group of finance mechanisms that unfortunately aren't used that much in energy. They're mainly been used in things like vaccine development and in medicine. But the role of pool finance, so the role of things like advanced market commitments, which was very successfully used in vaccine development. We're doing some new work to look at exploring the applications of pool finance mechanisms to those 4 areas that I mentioned, clean hydrogen, critical minerals, digitalization for energy, and industrial decarbonisation. But there are some other types of pool finance that have been around for a while, like results-based financing, particularly in biodiversity and forest management, that's been used for many, many years. And we also have an initiative called the Industrial Decarbonisation Initiative, which is focused on green public procurement approaches, which is another form of pool finance. So for us, there are 3 areas that we're working quite a lot on at the moment.
Muchas gracias por esos ejemplos y quizá ahora
Thank you
bajándolo
for those examples. And now just to put it down to our local reality and how AMLA and Santander can tell us a little bit what are the innovative examples and financial instruments that are sustainable that you have done and that eventually they can be copied in the region or applicable in the region. As Peter said, the blended finance and this type of things is really important. And in Chile, we do not have blended finance, that model, and we are not eligible for that. So I think there are some differences, but we have also some initiatives. The reality is that we do not have that, and we have to work with what we have. Maybe you are doing some initiatives that are very innovative, and maybe you can tell us about that. Claudia, thank you. Thinking about the innovation that we as an insurance company can provide in this market in relation to renewable energy and in relation to preparing this panel, actually, we have been preparing for a long time, and we were actually disruptive in the insurance, caution insurance system in Chile. There's an industry that is quite a square. It's difficult to get out of that box, but the instrument per se actually allows to do a lot of things since, well, we started in the market in 2014, and since 2015, we saw that there was this important gap regarding this usage of these instruments in Chile, and that it's related to the reality that we have in Europe, the caution policies and financial bonds and guarantee policies and security bonds, all of that, that was absolutely with a higher penetration in the different markets. And in the market of energy, we started even before the financiers, because we have to develop the technology to fund those energy projects that are public projects that are developed in the fields or in the ground of the property of the state. And for the ones that have that condition, we started with them doing it massively. First of all, making presentation to different areas of the government for them to understand that this guarantee policy was actually something very similar to the bank caution, and that actually coexists with the development of the future of the project. And we didn't want to stop there, and we started to get into the other stages of the project. So not only because it was a new area, but also because of the impact that this had. Since 2018, 2019, we also started having an action with the KLW that actually tell us about the impact of the sustainable development impact in the region. And we saw that these were small scale, and we specialized with the purpose of getting into the different ranges of these contracts and public quotas of energy, and sometimes we insurance the PPA, the APP in the first tender in 2017. We have been looking at the values of the market, and the truth is that we have emblematic examples, some with more success than others, that until today they haven't had any further execution, and I mean in terms they haven't been cashed. Now, but for us, it was really emblematic to participate in the development of these LITO code, that it was the first combined energy project, and we knew a little bit of what happened in California and the US, and looking at what at the lenders and how it was funded and how it was guaranteed, we made the insurance of this contract. And not only in Chile, we are doing it in Peru, and today we are also adding these in the development of the energy market in Brazil. We are waiting for the regulation focus is changing in Mexico, and then mainly in Texas as well. What it's going on, we think that all of these together, the future, the sustainable business, the support to decarbonization and to comply with the Chilean goal, it's going to be emblematic. We have issued more than 100 insurance policies here in Chile. We have $2.3 million insured in the region, and we have insurance policies for the closing programs on different mining sites, with a great impact in this damage that it can be generated from it. We participated in the modification of the regulation and the law. We are really proud to be relevant actors in the change of public policies. And I think that is the main challenge that we have had as an insurance company. because it's weird that an insurance company is dealing with us. So this role usually it is given to associations or private or someone from the public sector, funding, banking. So we have seen that from our technical perspective, guaranteeing obligations that are fundamental. This is an important part for the development of the credit and loans and the payments. They need to be viable, and together with the different funding entities, we are supporting the creation of the trust that supports the development of the energy market in Chile, and that so we can continue with our goal and aims into the future. And something very relevant that happened last year, we were the first company that actually insurance also a normative part and the first enforcement project of green hydrogen that it is called Volta. I think it's very popular, I think, with MAE. And also there we have the challenges, understanding and structuring from the technical and financial perspective. This future process, these additional ifs, right? And so we can make these changes happen at the legal level. This is one of the greatest challenges. And I think that we need to have more development in Latin America of these instrument in Europe is so common, and they have a very greater development. And actually the banking industry also has accepted these caution policies to guarantee, besides the credit and loans, and to reduce the capital requirement or to have a restructuring. We work a lot with the ACC in Spain, and we can learn from Latin America about the use of this instrument, that it is not only for insurance of building buildings. It's a great development for the future. We have been working with this, and not only because it sounds beautiful to talk about sustainable development or to sell green policies, but we are totally sure that we are supporting the development of the Chilean economy, and we are going to have a great impact with the new generations, and you have to put a lot of head on it. It is like, it is a challenge of restructuration, but we have achieved important milestones related to innovation in the industry and restructuration as a part of being able to deal with the renewable energies. Question for Sole, for you about those innovative instruments. I think that taking these words of Gabriel, actually we as a bank, well, it's very important to have those guarantees that will allow us to fund. And in that sense, the bank, it has a very important role at the global level in the funding of energy. Chile also has emblematic transactions, and sometimes we have investment with photovoltaic energy, batteries, and storage. We have also work with the program Lo Aguirre, and also as a commercial bank, we have a role in that. It is something interesting for small and medium-sized companies. And one of the things we have worked on is this particular alliance with Solarity from the Brookfield Group. And Solarity, it is a company that is a distributed energy. We provide the funding to Solarity, and Solarity works in the industrial sector, and that PPA, it's a long-term one, and deep down,
que de repente es uno de los grandes desafíos para ampliar el alcance de esta. Lo hace con energía limpia. su patrón de consumo, ahorro de al menos 30%.
The pattern of
entonces,
consumption is
eso
at
en el
least
fondo se está poniendo
30%,
nuestro saldo,
and that is
personal para
something
llevar eso a nuestro
that is
portafolio
moving on
en el sector industria. Entonces,
in the
ese es un
industrial
ejemplo
sector.
ya no estamos hablando de los
So
grandes
this is
proyectos,
not an
por supuesto,
example.
no
We're not
estamos
talking
para
about the
esta
great
mujer,
projects here
pero también de cómo
and
ayudamos finalmente
how
a nuestro portafolio
we
de clientes
deal with our
a hacer
portfolio
en
customers in different
avanzar
segments
hacia las
in moving
transiciones
on to the
requeridas.
transition that are requested. So
Súper interesante porque
it's very
justamente eso,
interesting
ese
because
tipo
really
de
that type
intervenciones
of
son las
thing of
que, no sé si son
intervention,
las más
they
difíciles,
are
pero
the
sí hay un gap
most
ahí, yo creo que
difficult
todos
probably,
vemos
but there's a
de
gap.
cierto tipo
And we believe there's a
de proyectos que
certain
son a gran escala,
project
empresas
of
más pequeñas
midterm
y la
and
discusión ahí, el
the
desafío está
discussion
en
there,
cómo
it's
lo
part
agrupas,
of
si esta idea de hacer una
the
agrupación,
group
porque además se ofrece a tus
on
clientes,
what we're doing,
me
but
parece
it is
súper
offered to our customers.
innovador dentro de este
So I
contexto.
think it's very innovative in
No
this
sé si
context
tenemos
after all.
tiempo
And
para
I
una
don't know
última
if we
pregunta.
have time for a last question.
Quizás
And
solo si es que digan, no sé,
here
yo diría
it's a matter of saying
un mensaje de una
of
frase
like
de lo
a
que quieren que sea en el fondo un poco con lo que se quede
someone like
no sé, el
saying
mensaje que
what is the rest about and what is the message of what is going to happen and what are we going to do.
No, nuevamente, muchas gracias por la oportunidad de participar
Thank you
en
very
este
much
panel.
again
Creo
for
que
the
es
opportunity of
bastante
being part of this panel.
interesante
I
conocer
think that is
las
quite interesting.
visiones de
The
los actores
visions,
con más experiencia también en el
the
desarrollo de la
experience
industria y así como
on the
lo
industry,
comentaban, efectivamente
and
no solo nos
really
interesa estar en los grandes
is
desarrollos, que son un tremendo
not
desafío,
only the great
pero sí
development,
mirar cómo con nuestras soluciones
it's a
podemos
matter
impactar a la pequeña y a la mediana empresa.
and how
Que
can
eso
we
sí es un
impact the
tremendo desafío.
midterm
Y
company? This
ahí
is a huge
adoptar
challenge. And
estos
there,
instrumentos
it's
para trabajar juntos y
part of
desarrollar
the
el
tool,
futuro de estas empresas, creo que ese
a
ha
part of the
sido
development of the
principal
company.
desafío y
This has
también uno
been
de
a
los
greatest
principales
challenge
retos.
ahead and the
Muchas gracias
first
por invitarme a
things that
participar y
we
espero
want
haber
to
podido
be
ayudar
part of,
en algo
and
en la
we
tarea de
really
hoy.
wanted to be part of the panel.
Yeah, I think just to add one thing which is different to what we've discussed so far. That
Sí,
I think one key element of also de-risking projects is the role of inclusive safeguards. And I think that's absolutely essential because we think about financing barriers, but there's also the role of how do we integrate gender equality, social inclusion, and environmental social safeguards, not as what unfortunately we see a lot of project developers seeing it as a tick box exercise, but actually rather than a strategic choice and investment that actually de-risks the projects. You know, community acceptance obviously is not going to lead to project overruns or permit delays or those types of issues. But we often see a lot of developers looking at it not through the lens of how it actually de-risks investment. And all of the projects we support, that's an absolutely essential criteria. So the first 5 projects we announced this year all have really important commitments to safeguards, which is making them more bankable. And we actually see more private investors are now coming in as a result of it.
Como un mensaje final, yo diría que los
like a
bancos,
final message, I would say,
para decirlo en buen chileno, como el rol
like
de
the role, we don't have the role of lending money.
pero finalmente es amplificar el efecto
That is also a reality, but it's a matter of widening up the effect of what the organisms do and the organization
de desarrollo en un sentido más amplio.
and the development that is
Nuestro rol es
wider.
es permear eso
Our role is to permeate that
de la sociedad
and the
contribuir también
examination due to the contribution to that ecosystem.
punto principal.
And this is where I go
Se
to.
puede hacer
This is
solo.
what I want to
Hace alianza.
talk about.
Entonces,
It can be done alone.
tenemos que salir a conversar más, tenemos que
It's
salir a
part
hacer
of
más
the
diálogo,
alliance
y
and
hagamos esos esfuerzos
really focus on those efforts,
apalancándonos en los desafíos que
triggering
tenemos todos.
and focusing on the challenges that we all have.
Muchas gracias por la
Excelente.
invitación.
Yo encontré súper buenos los mensajes finales.
I thought that the final message was
gracias a todos.
fantastic. So thank you so much. Thank you all very much for your final message and all your comments. Really, thank you.
Bueno, Gabriela, Peter, Soledad, Claudia, muchas gracias. Les
Gabriela,
pido
Peter, Soledad,
que hagan una
Claudia,
foto
please, if you
del
can get
panel.
together for a picture of the panel, that would be fantastic.